Northern Power Women podcast. For your career and your life, no matter what business you're in.
Is that a daffodil I see before me? Happy March and welcome to episode 33 of the Northern Power Women podcast. Don't forget to keep your axe sharp. I'm Sam Walker, and this month we were back at the brilliant University of Bradford, where we talked about whether employers should keep a keener eye on the social media behaviour of employees. We had some more life lessons and discussed whether adult learning should be part of your ongoing career plan.
Look, a woodcutter wouldn't go into the forest and cut down the tree with a blunt axe. Yeah, you spend time, you sharpen your axe first, and then you go into the woods. Yes, and then your life becomes much easier and you don't get blisters all over your hands. And that's the attitude that I take towards learning.
The big interview is with Professor Shirley Congdon, Vice Chancellor of Bradford University, who spoke about finding her role models outside her own sector and how the reputation of students today has changed radically from the beer-swilling students of yesteryear.
I'm going to meet some students when we finish chatting, and they're Chevening scholars on scholarships, international students, and when they come to Bradford, the first thing they want to do is, what can I do to make a difference to Bradford whilst I'm here? Which was amazing, really, isn't it, when you think about it?
And in your Northern Power Women Shout Outs, it's your chance to give some appreciation to the people who've gone the extra mile, helped you in your career, or even changed your whole life.
My mum, Emma Williams, she was the one who set me out on my path to becoming a game designer, all because she put me in front of a PS2 when I was 7 years old.
But first, let's catch up with the founder of Northern Power Women, currently organising the small matter of a huge awards ceremony later this month, the ever-inspiring Simone Roche MBE, with some news from HQ.
Well, it has been an absolutely frenetic yet fabulous February as the team at Northern Power Women headquarters prepare for the 5th Northern Power Women Awards. It's also our birthday on the 12th of March. Happy 5th birthday to us. And thank you all for your support. It's been an amazing 5 years and we're really excited to be celebrating with 950, if not more, guests at the 5th Awards, which take place on the 16th of March. We can't believe it. It's, where we've come from, and it is now the largest celebration of gender equality in Europe. So, wow, congratulations to all of our shortlists and all of our new power lists, future lists, and a big thanks to all the judges. And we've been running around, of course. I started the month with the Premier League Charitable Foundation, talking about all the wonderful work that they're doing to help support and advance social mobility, the work that they're doing with young girls and role models. So we're really supportive of that. I was also on one of our fantastic future lists, Ganan Adamu's show on BBC Radio Merseyside on her Upfront show with the wonderful power lister Irene Affle talking all things role models, which that's what we love to talk about all the time. Then headed over to Leeds. I hosted a panel on smashing stereotypes at CBRE. 80 attendees, and you can catch up on everything that happened on that really lively panel on our social media on CBRE Smashing Stereotypes. It was fantastic. And we had one of our new members of the team, Laura Tramontano, represented us at an event called Women in Business in Preston, and it was a film roundtable talking about what Lancashire is doing to support female business leaders and what else can be done. So that was brilliant as we continue on our programme that we're doing with Lancashire 2020 on supporting scale-up female entrepreneurs. So get in touch if you still want to get involved with that. We've obviously been in Yorkshire again, recording this episode of 33 of the Northern Power Women podcast at the University of Bradford. It's the third in the fourth series of our sponsored episodes over here with the fabulous Udi, Dr. Mohammed and the amazing Cassandra, who's been to all of our episodes. And we talked about some really far-reaching conversations, including the tragic death of Caroline Flack. We really discussed the impact that social media has and the lack of regulation and what we can do. And in the audience was Nikki Chance-Thompson, who has, is driving with government and the media a whole campaign around regulation around social media. So if you want to get in touch, please find Nikki on social media, Nikki Chance Thompson at the Peace Hall. She's been supported by the actor Chris O'Dowd, no less. So this is really about us taking action. So thank you so much for Nikki for getting part of that conversation. I was delighted to host a celebration event for the Metro Mayor of the Liverpool City region, Steve Rotherham, and that was a celebration event at Woodside Ferry Village for all of their staff, and that was fantastic. Again, talking about 160 people in a room celebrating, brilliant role models. So not as much running around, but finished the month off visiting the HMS Prince of Wales, which has come alongside for a week-long tour. So that has been me going back to my roots of the Royal Navy and been really exciting. So thanks ever so much for all of your support, everything that you're doing to keep the conversation going, and we look forward to celebrating with you all through the month of March. See you next month. Thank you.
Thanks so much to Simone, and I really hope to see you at the awards this year, 16th of March at Manchester Central. Just can't wait. Now this month, as we do every month, we got together and had a conversation. As ever, we picked 3 questions to chew over and hopefully give you some food for thought. Do come and join in the conversation by using the hashtag NPW Podcast on social media. It'd be great to hear from you. This month, we were in Bradford.
It was like a little dance I did here then today at Bradford. Welcome to the University of Bradford. This is episode 33 of the Northern Power Women podcast. And this is the third in a series of sponsored podcasts that we've done here at the university. So we're delighted to be back here. It's a beautiful Yorkshire day, is it not, everyone? I'm getting that look. It was definitely sunny on the M62. I definitely felt that on the way over. But we have, as ever, got a fantastic panel here today to discuss 3 questions and start the conversation. We always like to have little chats as we go across the north of England, and today is without exception. So let me introduce you to Professor Udi Archibong, PhD, MBE. That is a long business card, Udi, isn't it? And is Professor of Diversity at the University of Bradford, where she directs the Centre for Inclusion and Diversity and provides strategic oversight for equality, diversity and inclusion across the institution, and is also, as of last year, on the Northern Power Women Power List. Welcome to Dr. Mohammed Ali, is the founder and chief executive of QED Foundation. It's an ethnic minority-based employment charity he set up 30 years ago. He was born in Pakistan but has lived in Bradford from the age of 12. So that's only about 5 years, surely. Look at that. Welcome, Dr. Mohammed. And finally, our fantastic supporter. You've been here at all of our Bradford podcasts, I think, Cassandra. Cassandra MacDonald is Senior Business Improvement Consultant at BPP and is passionate about the power of education. There's lots of P's today in everyone's profile, to transform people's lives. She's a governor of 2 schools in the Bradford district, a qualified accountant, and she has worked in the education sector for 14 years. And Cassandra is very excited about what the future holds for Bradford and would love to see it recognised as City of Culture in 2025. Absolutely, we're here with you on that. Please welcome to our panellists today. As we said, we always encourage you to join the conversation. So if you would like to ask any questions, get anyone involved in the panel, and please do get in touch at North Power Women or podcast at northernpowerwomen.com. Let's start with the first of our 3 questions. We're here today, as I've said, at Bradford University, where incredibly 4 in 10 students are adult learners. How hard is it for people a bit later in life who no doubt have more financial responsibilities to go back into learning? And how have you observed them flourish? Udi, you're here at the university. I'm going to start with yourself.
I think the beauty of that is we working with students that have a lot on, and we're having to be very flexible in our approach, ensuring that we are sensitive to the needs of such students. So we believe very strongly that these students have distinctive needs, and that as professionals, as lecturers and so on, we've got to work with them. So that then has implications in the way we take on our values of supporting learning environments, the university itself being a place that we as staff also learn on our jobs, as well as support that student body. I think there's something that sometimes people don't really consider, that if we make our workplaces learning organizations, it means that there's always something that you learn from others, and they also need to learn from you. So we have to bring that into our student experience values around inclusion, values around trust, transparency, and ensuring that we respect everybody in that classroom.
So because of the values of the university, that's why, it works here. That's why there's an infrastructure to support that. So to our other panellists not here at the university, do you know someone who's ever considered retraining or a period of learning later in life? Dr. Mohammed.
QD Foundation, we're celebrating 30 years of operation in Bradford, and that's what we do actually. We train up to about 1,000 people every year, and they're all adults. So adult learning is part and parcel of QD's work. We try and get people into employment. That's our main focus, because we believe that the integration starts with employment. If we can get ethnic minorities into employment, then everything else will take care of itself. And I can give you countless examples of adults coming to us. In fact, almost all our students are adults coming from various countries, mainly from Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. And I can give you two examples of adults who came to us with almost no qualifications or very little qualifications, and now they are doing excellent jobs because we have encouraged them to learn whilst they were with us. One person, a young woman who came from Pakistan, she was married here, and he came to us, and she started as a volunteer with us. We sent her on various courses to become an English language teacher, and after 3 or 4 years, she became a qualified teacher, earning £20 an hour, and she was excited about that because she could never dream of getting that much money. And now she's got a full-time job. So I'm a great believer in adult learning. I myself have been a beneficiary of that. I started my career as a scientist, so I was trained as a scientist in chemistry, and then I changed my career, starting from a beginning to learn about what this community development was all about, and that was in the 1982. And I started, learning part-time, going to conferences, attending an MBA course from Bradford Management Center part-time, 3 years. So I always advocate people that, lifelong learning is part and parcel of life. So adult education is a key to success in life.
Every day is a school day, I think, and it's great to hear these brilliant examples. And Cassandra, this is, as we said at the top, education is your lifelong passion, isn't it? So what about yourself? Experience with people going into education at later in life?
Yeah, I mean, when I heard this question, it reminded me of my granddad, God rest his soul. But, in my very first job, I actually was made redundant within about 3 months because the company went bust. And he was absolutely horrified, because in his view, you had a job and you had that job for life. And, the thought of having another job was just something that was completely alien to him. And I think it is interesting looking, in that time, 20 years since, how retraining now is just something that's so accepted and that so many people can do. And the wonderful range of courses, apprenticeships that are available, enabling people to retrain. You just see more and more people doing it. Personally, one of my good friends, a colleague, she worked with me for many years as a training provider. And, she had her first baby and just decided she really wanted to be a teacher. So, she just went back, retrained, and is doing phenomenally well now. So, and that's all at the age of 40. So I think, absolutely can be done. And the range of opportunities now just means that, you don't have to stick in that job that you got when you were 21 and, leave when you're 65. If you want to do that, that's great. But if you want to do something different, that's fantastic as well.
So life begins at 40, I think.
There's more on that later.
When we recorded the very first sponsored episode here at the university, I think it was graduation day back in the summer, it was chaos. It was there's like people everywhere. And that was one of the comments that I noticed. You could see it visibly across the campus. You know, you've got people of all ages. But what you saw with every family that accompanied that graduate was that pride. You know, and I think that is priceless. How many people in our room today have taken part in learning at a later in life, so out of school? Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. So what we're talking here about? Oh, actually, nearly half the room here, which I think is anything that you would like to share? She says, wanting to come and lunge at anyone with the microphone. Jane.
What I would say is that learning is continuous, and an old colleague of mine once said to me, look, a woodcutter wouldn't go into the forest and cut down the tree with a blunt axe. Yeah, you spend time, you sharpen your axe first, and then you go into the woods. Yes, and then your life becomes much easier and you don't get blisters all over your hands. And that's the attitude that I take towards learning, that if you can actually fit in little bits of learning incrementally, then it doesn't feel like a chore. It's something that becomes part of a routine and that you're constantly growing and developing. And set your sights on a goal, and then little bits at a time you can get there. But that's the approach to lifelong learning. Now, that you can do often yourself. There's masses of online learning, and there's super support from organisations like colleges and universities as well for you to tap into if you want to take it that little stage further.
Brilliant. I think it's just so fantastic, isn't it? And I think the research out there is that we will have at least sort of 5 or 6 distinct changes throughout our career path. There's no one size fits all anymore. You don't just do education, then you leave and you go into this. You can circle back, go back, take a sabbatical over here, whatever it may be. Everyone's got a different story, right? Moving on to question 2, which is not wanting to bring the mood down, but this is a whole different type of story. But the awful news about the suicide of Caroline Flack has led to a lot of discussion about the impact of social media and what it can have on our mental health. Do employers, along with schools and universities, have a responsibility to admonish staff or students about their online behaviour? And we were talking about this just before we started recording today, because once it's there, it's always there. Mohammed, where are you on the social media? Obviously, we saw a lot in the press following this, tragic suicide of a young life.
Social media can be very beneficial, but can be very harmful as well. I'm also governor of York St. John University, and this is coming up quite regularly, that we should be monitoring or having some sort of a strict guideline for students and teachers about use of social media. And I think, I've seen when I travel around the country, I see people using, every single one of them is using their mobiles all the time, and they're connected to probably millions or hundreds of thousands of people, but yet they're not connected to their own next door neighbor or their families. And constantly, in our own families, for example, 5 or 6 people sitting in a room, they're always on their phones and not connected. So I can't see that this can be beneficial. I only use, WhatsApp, and I don't use any other media. And I admire a great friend of mine in London who never uses any social media. He doesn't have a mobile. So I think I'm in my early 60s now, so I think it's something that I'm glad I'm not a young person, because when I see young people using media all the time, I just don't know how they do it. Seriously, I don't.
So it's one you're going to abstain from, Dr. Mohammed. We're not going to convince you. Cassandra, what's your thought?
I can't really get into the head of somebody that thinks it's appropriate to send a direct tweet being harmful to another person directly. I don't understand why you would ever want to do that. I think to the actual question, it's an interesting one, because it's, if you support, I'm a massive supporter of the Welsh rugby team. We're not doing too well at the moment, but and people discuss that on social media, and it might be the case that you want to say X player, I don't think he did that well that day or whatever, and it's just an extension of, you then stop from doing that because he might read that and that might be hurtful. And whilst I wouldn't necessarily engage in that, I understand that fans, that's part of what they want to talk about. Having said that, I think if you are actually sending messages that are really harmful and really upsetting, then you have to be aware that, you know, if you're going to go onto social media, your employers might know that you're on there, might see that, and might question whether you're the type of employee that they want to have working for them. So I think you need to take responsibility for that. And equally, I think it's fair for employers, if they do see that type of behaviour, to call it out and to act on it.
I think this is a topic that is a whole... We need to talk about it. We've been talking about different instances of social media bullying, harassment. Why is it okay to send that offensive tweet direct or publicly? Why is that? Udi, I know we've spoken about this before, and I know you've got some thoughts on this, haven't you?
Yeah, I really do. I am a strong believer in public engagement in whatever you do. So as a professor in a university, we really want to have open science, and what a wonderful way to just tweet something about a piece of research you've done. I do a lot of work around diversity, and therefore my tweet will always be about specific findings to look at how inequalities can affect people. It's a fantastic way to spread science. However, there are people who take advantage of that and are mean. And I can say hand on heart, my heart goes out to Caroline's family. And I think we can go beyond just looking at the impact on Caroline and looking at impact on other people. And I've had series of conversations with people about why would you be so hateful to go up there and be unkind. And so I think there's something which I really feel is a big slight on our society as human beings, that we could use and seize this opportunity to harm people and be hateful. So my organization and many higher education institutions do have very strict guidelines and policies about use of social media. So in Bradford, employees and students are warned that any social media breach of some sort will be subject to disciplinary. I think it should be that because I have a strong belief that the world around us is already a very painful place. But to have to pick the social media and receive hate in a world that we have a lot of contexts. So now we know that Caroline was living with mental health problems. So how on earth would we, and the media is to blame? I personally would say that I've been looking at the analysis of the kinds of messages the media was putting out, the social media and so on. The analysis that Guardian has put out is from August 2019, that the negative messages that Caroline received was literally double. I mean, we're talking about a human being. So I think the principle I personally work to is about humanity. And I think humanity has to transfuse everything that we do as human beings. And if you turn around and find that you wouldn't personally tolerate that level of messaging, then don't put it out there for anybody else. And I would employ institutions to really insist that we use social media for what we should use it for, which is about public engagement. Now, there's nothing wrong in being constructive in criticizing things, but if the intention is to harm, where we see all the time, then I think it's a shame on our humanity.
It is, and I think... And just, what do you think here in the room, if an employee of your organisation, academic or otherwise, trolls another celebrity or another member of the community, should the company discipline them? Hands up, show of hands. Okay. It's interesting, it's probably, 70%? Coming into the audience, Nikki Chance-Thompson, one of our fantastic powerlists from the fantastic Peace Hall in Halifax.
Hello, thanks, Simone. I think you were in the room with me over the last couple of days. It's something that I've suffered from personally. And it's a new phenomena for people. It's a bit like the Wild West on social media, or Lord of the Flies, if you want to put it that way, in that there are no rules attached. It's it's ungoverned, it's not being managed, and yes, there's freedom of speech, but with every kind of freedom of speech come consequences. If you say things that harm other people or cause detriment to another human being. It's really interesting because I've been speaking to a leading editor of a newspaper and also a leading politician about this. I've been deeply concerned about the impact on people of mental health. Not everybody is resilient. Not everybody can say, oh, okay, they're just idiots, they're trolls. Some of the stuff is really personal, very unkind. And it's when it's sustained abuse that it becomes a problem. And actually, we're not geared up for this world. You know, growing up, we become more resilient because of our experiences. This is a completely new phenomena that we're not geared up to deal with. And I have a coach that helps me with it after a particularly traumatic time last year. And she is helping people that you wouldn't think, oh, that they would probably be okay with this. And actually, these are leading industry people, leading celebrities who are really struggling with this. And it's really hurting them. And they have gone to dark places with it, as poor Caroline did. I had a few conversations last week with the editor and the politician. They want to do something about it. There are lots of different groups. And the issue's complex. There is an advertising model that is driving ghoulish stories that people clickbait. There's the phenomenon of clickbait that's driving ghoulish stories. It's negative stories. And actually advertisers do very well out of it because of the reach. So there's something around the whole kind of clickbait advertising model that needs a review. The other element is around editorial integrity and how we encourage editors to be good editors rather than this constant ghoulish stories that keep appearing and harming people. And then there is the human race and how we treat each other. And, you know, the MPs have got a lot to answer for around this, about how they talk to each other in chamber, how they talk to each other on Twitter, how the media have behaved around that, like a feeding frenzy of negative hate. Brexit didn't help things, it divided us. The media again played a role in that. So it's complex, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't do something about it. So a working group's been set up that I've been quite involved in that's going to look at this and how we can break it down and how we can tackle it. And one of Caroline's friends, who is a leading actor in Hollywood, reached out to me on Twitter and said, how can I help? He's grieving, so I'm treading very carefully with him. And he's agreed to put his name to it too. But we've got to do something. We as a society, whether we're employers, whether we are teachers, whether we're parents, I have parents say to me, I hope you manage to sort this out because I've got children who aren't on the internet yet and I'm frightened for them. We've created this. Online media hasn't created it. We have. So it's how we tackle it. And we've all got to take responsibility for how we talk to each other and how we actually call people out. Ignoring trolls does not always work. It's not about feeding them, it's about stopping them. So how we work with online companies, how we work with the media, and how we encourage each other to be kinder. I mean, the Yorkshire tea thing that just happened, you know, was just hideous. And quite often I have introduced my media team to humans who have harmed them online and said, this is a human being that you are speaking to like that. You know, and when you put people in that position, human to human, something stops. Something happens when you're meeting human to human that you don't do when you're with a keyboard and being a warrior. So it's something that's very close to my heart. It's something we need to change. Women in particular are copying it at the moment. There's a lot of misogyny going on online, which is really quite frightening, which I was on the receiving end of. But it's down to us to deal with this. So I've started something. I'm not planning world domination of the media, but we do need to tackle it, and hopefully bit by bit we'll get there. But it's going to take time.
Thanks, Nikki, and we'll share as you keep... my hands are full like that. I couldn't clap, but I'll give you a hug in a minute, right? You'll keep us informed on what's going on because there'll be people in this room that want to get involved, even if it's lending support. Thank you for sharing, and thank you, panel. And sort of coming into our last question, if we were going to be deliberate and to go back and give yourself advice at the start of your career, what would you say? What advice would you give to your 18-year-old self? Udi, I'm coming to you first.
I think that's not a long time ago.
Of course not, sorry. Well, what about, should we go back to primary? That's probably, 12 years, right?
Right, okay. So I think hindsight is a fantastic thing, and I love it because I can always say that if I was to relive my life and go back a few years or a lot of years ago, I think the first thing that I would want to do would be to acknowledge that I cannot change the world all at one go. I would accept that I can only contribute bits at a time. So I ended up with a situation where I want to do everything all the time. And it has huge implications for me, the person, family, friends, and I find myself going up and down and doing so much. I'm speaking at every conference. Today I'm in Sierra Leone, tomorrow I'm in America. And so one thing I am saying to my, I'm really young self is please just do it bits at a time, because work-life balance, and we're not kind to ourselves. Because what that does is, towards this age that I'm in now, I'm having to fight some long-term illness, from blood pressure to you name it, because of trying to do too much. So that's one. The second one would be to actually accept me, as in looking after myself, but accepting who I am with everything that I bring to life, and accepting that everything about me is very good. So I'll give you an example. When I was younger, it was okay to really go around not eating much because you want to look a certain way. So what I would be saying to myself now would be, please be yourself and be comfortable in who you are. And please create joy for yourself, so it doesn't matter how others view you. If in you have that joy and that satisfaction, then that is it. It doesn't matter about how others view you. And finally, and this is most important, is that I have to also protect me from over-supporting others, so self-preservation. So one of the things I will be saying to myself is, what are your boundaries? There has to be a balance between how you support others and how you support self. And that many times you'll have to stop to say, sorry, I cannot push it that far because I've got me to look after. Remember, if you are not well enough, if you're not capable and you haven't got the energy, then you cannot help other people around you.
I'm nodding over here. I'm nodding, but I'm not. But it's about you. You are at the heart of everything. Cassandra.
Yeah, I thought this was a great question because it just really meant something to me. So a couple of years ago, I turned 40 and I had a bit of a crisis moment. I was just like, what am I doing with my life? What am I doing with my career? I've not really achieved anything. And I went on a Women in Leadership course, which was just transformative for me. And they made me really think about and reflect back. And I think one of the things that really struck me was, I came from a background, that I worked incredibly hard, and that was the school system. And, I flourished in it and I did really, really well. And I got good GCSEs and I got good A-levels and I went to university. I think that was the mentality that I took into my career, which was you just work hard and good things will happen. And actually, I think, being on this course, and it was quite a harsh lesson, was actually I'd been incredibly passive and just expected that in a career, I'd get those promotions, people would be, supporting me and I'd do really well. And actually, I needed to be a lot more proactive and actually maybe not be so much of a good girl and call things out when, things didn't sit right for me and not be as afraid to rock the boat. So I think that's probably what I would say to my 18-year-old self is, you've got to have maybe a little bit more fight in you and be your own champion really and fight for yourself, because it's not always going to be the case that you just work hard, sit an exam and get your A star and then, really great things are going to happen. So, yeah, that was my answer.
So your life did begin at 40 then, again. Dr. Mohammed.
My 18-year-olds, which are not 18 anymore, a lot older now, I tell them that, you spend 1/3 of your life working, do something that you really enjoy. I am very lucky that I don't really regret anything in my career, so I'll do exactly what I've done. And if you just remember when I came in the late 60s, when children from Pakistan were coming, when they were 12 or 13 years old, and my father actually was very keen for me to study. So first 10 years I spent learning English language. After 69 I came here, 79, 10 years. Without a word of English language I graduated, which was I thought a big achievement. And then for next 10 years I worked in all sorts of jobs. I used to hop jobs every year. And in 1990 I was made redundant. So I thought, what should I do in Bradford? So I thought, why not start something from scratch? And so with £200 donation I started QED. So I'm very lucky that I've done a very extremely good job. So I think the day I think it's a job, I'll probably give up. So I've really been privileged that I really enjoyed my work. So I always say to everybody who comes to me that always do something that you really enjoy. And a lot of Asian people, tend to advise their children to become lawyers or accountants or sort of doctors. Or if they can't do that, then drive a taxi or maybe start a takeaway. And I said there are hundreds of other jobs in which they can go into. And that's one of the campaigns that I've been running for the last 30 years, to try to encourage people to move into all sorts of occupations. When we celebrate our 30th anniversary on 2nd of April, we're launching an award scheme called Your Curation Young Achievers Awards. And I was really gobsmacked at the number of nominations we got and the amount of talent there is in the communities.
Fantastic top tips. Mine is always say yes and work it out later. I think I've said it before on the podcast. And I think we talked earlier, didn't we, Leslie? What was yours? You had a cracking one just before.
Be bold, be brave, break the barriers. I work in a male-dominated field in transport, and I used to want to merge in and wear my little black suit, but now I'm the authentic me. I rebel against everything, and like you, I say yes and then work out how I'm going to do it afterwards.
Brilliant. Listen, thank you so much to our fantastic panel this afternoon in Bradford. Thank you.
Another big thank you to the University of Bradford for being such great hosts, and of course to you as well if you managed to come along and see us at the event. We do love to see you, so keep your eye on Twitter at North Power Women or on Instagram at Northern Power Women for details of our next recording. And if, of course, you'd like to host us, well, we'd love to come and see you. Send us an email, podcast@northernpowerwomen.com. In the big interview this month, Professor Shirley Congdon, the Vice-Chancellor, in fact the first ever female Vice-Chancellor of the University of Bradford. Shirley's first job was in nursing, and I asked her what drove her to a career in healthcare.
Well, I suppose from being quite young, I had a few family members who started off their career in nursing. I think must have got quite inspired and interested in the career from their experiences and their stories that they were telling me when I was young. And I think the other thing is to be fairly frank. I think going through school as a young woman, and I really didn't have that much of what you would call inspiring career advice or opportunities that were really presented to think more broadly about what you might do when you finish school. But so I pursued the idea of going into nursing, did work experience, etc., and sort of fell into it, I suppose, just through family.
Who was it within your family then who inspired you to go down that path?
So these would have been sort of my mum's aunties who were working in healthcare at the time. And two of them in particular had been working in healthcare during the Second World War, and they were pretty elderly, some of them. Wow. But they'd entered into this at a time when they needed people to move into healthcare and went through a rapid induction and training to help out at a time of great need.
You went into nursing, as you said, and you worked in A&E, didn't you? You worked in that sort of very, very tough, very high pressure, intense environment. So what then happened in terms of the way your career turned? Because you kind of put one foot in academia, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. So I think what I found once I'd qualified, that things weren't always what you thought they would be. And the quality of care and the standard of care wasn't uniformly great right across the sector. So it led me to want to make a bigger influence and have a bigger impact on young men and women that were coming through nursing, and to try and make an impact through teaching and learning. So that led me to take a joint appointment up, which was half in education and half in clinical practice. And that was a really great role, because you got to see students in practice, you got to still work with patients and people from many different backgrounds, but at the same time you were trying to, address issues of evidence-based practice through research and an academic route.
That's quite revolutionary in a way, isn't it? From a structural point of view, especially when you talk about women who enter nursing, quite often with the pressures that many working women have of family life and children, that career progression wasn't always a kind of straight line or a simple path for them. Did this change things?
I think it did. I mean, I suppose the NHS at the time were trying to address a significant issue that they were facing, which was a bit of they called it themselves a postcode lottery in terms of the quality of care, and that nursing and some of those other professions weren't degree level entry professions at that time. So there was a big process of professionalising the nursing profession. It still took many, many years, and it still is happening, where you still don't see sufficient women progressing through their career at the same rate as males, even though the males are in the minority in nursing. But it's much better than it was. I still think there's structural issues that stop women generally progressing through their careers.
So tell me, if you will then, Shirley, how your career then progressed, how you went from this sort of clinical academic role within nursing to move into academia and education.
Well, I suppose I had an increasing desire. I was fairly driven, and I wanted to pursue a career, and I would observe people in their roles and what they did and the impact they had. And I always believed that I would be able to be somebody in a position where I could make a bigger difference. So I was always fairly driven to take on more responsibility and be more accountable. So that was there in the foreground, I suppose, rather than the background. But a number of things happened which created more opportunities, one of which was the training that nurses used to undergo was located in the NHS hospital trusts at that time. And it was moved into universities lock, stock and barrel. So there was a big tendering process, and a lot of the universities across the UK tendered to take the contract for nurse education and some of the other professions as well, to move them fully into university. And that meant that our contracts were moved over into university from an NHS contract.
I mean, drive and career ambition is one thing, of course, but quite often when we speak to women who've reached, senior positions in their career, they talk about the importance of mentorship or about role models in their career. Is that something that you went through? Did you have a mentor or a very strong role model who guided you?
Not really. I look back and I think there was quite a lot of people around who'd worked in the same place, in the same hospital, on the same ward for a long time, and they were fairly generally stuck in their careers. So the advantage that I had was that as we were seeing nursing professionalise and becoming more academic, I think the role models came from the university sector, where I could see people working in the social sciences and in the sciences more generally, women who were working in a different way, and that inspired me to move on. And I think the other thing that I would say was my mum was a serious champion for me. And despite the fact that I had 3 children and they were young, she really supported me every step of the way. In fact, if it wasn't for her, I don't think I would be able to have continued my career, because childcare was significantly challenging at that time. Still is now, really, isn't it, for people? It's very expensive.
Yeah. Well, last year, of course, and wonderfully on Yorkshire Day, no less, you became Vice-Chancellor of the University of Bradford. Congratulations. I mean, the very first woman to hold the role in the institution's history.
Yeah, thank you.
I mean, in some ways surprising, because Bradford's seen as such a progressive university, and yet you were the first woman.
Yeah, I mean, there's increasing representation of women in higher education in senior roles, but again, not as much and not as quickly as we would like to see it. I think there's been a bit in the past of a stereotype which is breaking down now, in terms of what type of characteristics and skills and knowledge you needed to be to lead a university. But I think there's much more of an understanding now that the skill set can be varied, it can be different, and it depends on what the organisation needs, rather than a fixed view of the skill set.
So when you took the role on, what were your primary goals? What were the things driving you into this role?
I mean, the number one thing is I want to make the University of Bradford an outstanding university that is wedded to social inclusion, quality teaching, quality research. And most people would say that for every university they want to work at. But it's more important for Bradford because we're really trying with the other anchor organisations in the city region and the Leeds City region and the North more broadly to really grow the economy. And the economy in Bradford needs significant investment, inward investment. We've got issues with our educational skills. We've got issues with people being interested maybe in careers in areas that they've never thought again. And we've got to really inject a lot of skills, higher level skills, and skills at every level, in fact, into all of our industries. So I really want to do it because I want Bradford to be great as well.
It's an interesting point you make there about creating a synergy between the university and the city. Quite often, I suppose, from an outsider's point of view, universities are seen as standalone institutions that don't necessarily integrate with the people around them. People, universities, people come from all over the country, perhaps all over the world to a university. But in Bradford, you're saying, well, we want to be the heart of the city and the economy and feed off each other.
Yeah, I mean, universities have always had a civic responsibility, but I think there's a real push now from businesses, from communities, from government, local and national government to, I suppose, really reiterate the importance of universities in creating a knowledge and a skills economy. And I think we've probably, at some universities, maybe not had that at the centre of our strategy. I mean, universities contribute significantly to their cities through the people they employ, through the supply chain, through the research. But we want to do that more here in Bradford. We want to situate it at the centre of our strategy.
What's extraordinary is you were named, of course, the most socially inclusive university in the UK by the Sunday Times Best University Guide. I mean, when you look at some of your statistics, more than 70% of your intake is Black, Asian and minority ethnic. More than half of the students you have come from the 4 poorest socio-economic groups in the country. I mean, it's a lot of students that you recruit in Bradford are from parts of the country where few people go to university. I mean, how are you doing this?
Well, I think it's been a strategy here at Bradford for many years. We've got quite a diverse population at Bradford anyway, and a very young population. So working with our local schools consistently, year on year, and initiatives about encouraging young men and women to be interested in careers in science, technology, medicine, etc. And it's that consistency really. And it's also the approach that you take with students in terms of seeing them as individuals, what interests them. Working closely with the Students' Union is another one of our key strategies.
How do you get the people through the door in the first place, though? Because I suppose the challenges you have are many and varied, because if there is someone who's come from a family where no one's ever gone to university before, where they don't see that as a path of theirs, where perhaps their family's like, look, we need to get you out earning, because if you're at university for 3 years, then there's the issue around a lot of the noise, especially in the press, about student debt and fees, or perhaps someone's coming back to you later in life once they've had a family and they've got those financial responsibilities. How do you talk to that person and say, look, this might seem like you're almost sort of putting your earning potential on hold or amassing a debt? What do you say to them?
You need an approach which is not just about what Bradford does or what Yorkshire does. It's about what the UK does and what universities across the world do. And first of all, we've got to make sure that we have an almost a single voice on the importance of universities to individuals. It increases their life chances, it increases their earnings over their lifetime. It adds value at an individual level. It makes communities more engaged in all sorts of things, not just careers, but volunteering, contribute to sustainable and peaceful societies, really, and helping people to have happy, healthy lives. And that message has then got to be translated through each individual university, through the outreach work they do, But it's also important that to recognise we can't do this by ourselves. So at Bradford, there's a lot of initiatives where businesses, schools and universities and the further education colleges are coming together. One example of this is the establishment of industrial centres for excellence, where businesses are actually leading the drive for enhancements in terms of getting people interested in careers, and then working with the universities and the college to do significant outreach work. So I think some of the programs you've got to look over a 10-year period of a program of activity. And the other big piece of really fundamentally important research that's going on in Bradford is the Born in Bradford cohort study, where the academics from the universities of Bradford and Leeds and other Yorkshire universities, led by the NHS Teaching Hospital Trust in Bradford with Professor John Wright, is really leading work about what influences the life opportunities and the life chances of young people in Bradford. And the oldest children in that cohort now are 13. So that's been a 13-year cohort study trying to understand what influences people's choices, their behaviours, their health, their well-being. And that will now be coming together, looking at how we work with 13-year-olds to inspire them to want to get a career in engineering or science or health. So these programs have got to have longevity to be impactful.
And that's really interesting, because when you look at the way that politics in our country is structured, when you've got governments who basically work to 4-year cycles, it must be hard in order to say, right, we want you to invest in this and get behind this. It's going to take 20 years. And what government's going to say, oh, yeah, great, I'll do that because I might not see the benefit from that.
Yeah, we want it tomorrow. But if you think about white working class boys, for example, they're really not being represented very well in universities currently, and that's been declining over a number of years. So the decline happens fairly slowly, and the turning that around is going to be really challenging. And it means, if we're not seeing the number of 18-year-old white working class boys coming through universities in the way that we would like to, so that they can contribute and we get a more diverse workforce, etc., we've got to be working with the primary schools, the academies, to try and put programs in to encourage and inspire them to want to either get into apprenticeships or degree level study, and to really power their lives on. And you can't do that just in 1 year or 2 years.
And you talked about the diverse communities within Bradford, of course, as well. And historically, and this is going back perhaps a generation or so, but historically it's quite often been seen that girls within certain communities do not go on to further education. Are you seeing a shift there as well?
We are seeing a shift, but we still have some people, some women in our university who will graduate, but then they won't go on to employment. So there is a level of underemployment, and we're currently undertaking a study to see if we can put some interventions in place to try and encourage these young women to want to continue, into work, because they've got a lot of really high level skills that we need.
You mentioned a few moments ago that one of your main ambitions within your new role is to really open up that line of communication with students and hear directly from students about what they want. In the more than 6 months since you took your role on, what have students been telling you about their concerns or their hopes?
One is they do want to see people that can inspire them and stretch their imaginations in terms of what they could do as a career, or what they could even do whilst they're at university. They're always looking for opportunities outside their study area, so joining associations, being interested in climate change, challenging political interests that they have. And I think we've got to offer a more rounded experience for students these days. The drinking culture's not so evident now as it used to be, and they want different things. So they care about their world, they care about their communities, and they care about each other. They like to be part of a community that cares. I mean, I'm going to meet some students when we finish chatting, and they're Chevening scholars on scholarships, international students, and when they come to Bradford, the first thing they want to do is, what can I do to make a difference to Bradford whilst I'm here? Which is amazing, really, isn't it, when you think about it? And, they're often running their own NGOs in different countries, or they'll go back to set up charities and NGOs. Their sort of passion is about making a difference. So they care about equal rights for women, they care about poverty, they care about the climate change. And I think we've got to remember that they're not just here to sit in lectures to be spoken to, they want to challenge and debate and find solutions.
Oh, that fills my heart with some hope for the future. It really does. Some of the state of politics around the world right now, that's wonderful. When you took your role on, of course, as Vice-Chancellor last year, as we were saying, there is still not an equal amount of women and men holding senior roles within academia. I think just 30% of vice-chancellors are women. As a woman who has really been very successful in her career, what advice would you give to any woman listening who wants to climb high in a field where perhaps there is a dearth of women at the top?
I think you've got to not be intimidated, not worry too much when you go into different arena or different fora that you might not be as good as anybody else. If the room is full of men or dominated by men, and you may think that they may have had more experience than you, or they may often have similar views, don't be intimidated and don't be afraid to make your point. Because if you're a bit hesitant in engaging in debate or challenging, you'll be overlooked and people will think that you haven't got a particular viewpoint on anything. So I think the key thing for me is if you've got a viewpoint, you need to be able to share it or you won't be heard, and then nobody will know about you.
Thank you so much to Professor Shirley Congdon for her time and really fascinating insight into the student culture of 2020. Whose life and career would you like to know more about? Do get in touch, let us know. Email podcast@northernpowerwomen.com. Now it's time now for your Northern Power Women Shout Outs. It's a great opportunity to give someone an audio pat on the back or shine a spotlight on someone you think has broken down a barrier, gone the extra mile, or faced a challenge at work. Let's have a listen.
Hi, my name is Nida Noor and I'm the social media and PR executive at Research Retold. I want to give a Northern Power Women shout out to my boss, Mihaela.
I want to give a shout out to Kate Ferguson, Head of Responsible Business at Pins & Masons. She's amazing. We've been #1 in Stonewall this year and it's all because of her.
I'd like to give a Northern Power Women shout out to the Women's Pensions Network, bringing Northwest women in the pensions industry together.
My shout out is to Faye Ijawari, who is the lead of Code and Stuff, a non-binary and women leading tech group in Manchester, because they're making such a big difference to diversify the Northwest in tech, and I think she's doing a great job.
My name is Alexia Williams and I'd like to give a Northern Power Women shout out to my mum, Emma Williams. She was the one who set me out on my path to becoming a game designer, all because she plopped me in front of a PS2 when I was 7 years old.
Hi, I'm Heather Waters, Enterprise Manager for NatWest. My Twitter handle is HeatherWaters15, please follow me. And I want to give a Northern Power Women shout out to Grace Bella of Miss Kick. Their Twitter handle is Grace Bella and also Miss Kick. And the reason why I want to give her a shout out, because amazing young woman starting a new business supporting women playing football and clothing for them.
Okay, hi, I'm Nikki Roach. I'm the Director of Business Development for Axia Origin. My Twitter handle actually is @Euros Consulting, UROS. I want to give out a big Northern Power Women shout out to Pam Doherty, who's the CEO of Axia Origin, who's a fantastic new CEO, and her Twitter handle is @Doherty_Pamela J.
Hi there, my name is Marios Kyriakou. I'm an analytics consultant at Axia Origin. My Twitter handle is MA_Kyriakou. I want to give a big Northern Power Women shout out to my colleague Shoaib Roy. His Twitter handle is SR_disrupt, and we are excited to take on board all the learnings we have today about selling ourselves and making a positive future at Axia Origin.
My name is Dawn Stockwell. I am Marketing Director at Vika PLC, and I would like to give a Northern Power Women shout out to the ladies of Vika PLC. We work really hard in a manufacturing, male-dominated business to make everything gender equal.
If you'd like to give someone a shout out, all you need to do is record a voice memo on your phone. Tell us who you are, who they are, and why they deserve a shout out. You can then email that little voice memo to podcast@northernpowerwomen.com. Or, of course, come to one of our events as well. You can tell us there. On Twitter @NorthPowerWomen or online at northernpowerwomen.com, you'll find out where we are going to be next, hopefully near where you are. Now, next month, Ask the Hive is back. This is a big dilemma for one listener.
I heard my boss talking to his boss in the kitchen and blaming me for a mistake in a client brief. That was his fault. I am furious, but don't know what to do about it.
So what a position to be in. Can you help? Please do send your advice by recording again a voice memo on your phone. You'll find a little app on your smartphone. Click record and then just email the audio to podcast@northernpowerwomen.com. Do please help this woman out. Answers to be heard on the next episode. Well, there we go for yet another month of great stories, advice and ideas. A huge thank you for listening. Please do leave us your feedback wherever you listen to your podcasts. I know it's a bit of a bother, but you could leave us a review in the time it takes to put a brew on. And it just means that more people will get to hear us, so we'd really, really appreciate it. Do save the date. The next episode arrives on Friday, April the 3rd, 2020. See you then, if not before, at the Northern Power Women Awards. Until then, this is the Northern Power Women podcast. I'm Sam Walker, and this has been a What Goes On media production for Northern Power Women.